ChainCulture.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. To guess or not to guess. So what we are talking about is, do you have to pay anything for any transaction? This is not the rain. This is only the background sound we created here. Many clients or users of blockchain don't like the fact that they lose funds while doing transactions. There are different solutions for this, and after the three gentlemen introduce themselves a little bit, we will go into details. So please start with your introduction to what you are doing, but short.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Aaron. I'm the CEO of Igloo APAC. We are the Asia Pacific arm for Pachi Penguins. But of course, we also have like a sister company called Abstract, which is the green appster there. Yeah, I know we are all about retail and consumer crypto, and we are definitely the best brand in Web3 when it comes to brand awareness, and you know, we're doing our best, right, to bring more people into the crypto industry.
Jake.
Hi, I'm Jake from Scale. We are a EVM layer 1 chain with zero gas fees. So basically we focus on applications building for Web 2-like experiences.
Hi, I'm Dan Notestein. I'm one of the core devs for Hive. Hive kind of started out as a social media blockchain and sort of spreading out into many different areas as we go along.
Okay, so Roland, microphone is not working. We take the other one.
We just share.
Okay, back to the topic. As you said, you work with many end users, and this means they have some wishes if they do transactions. So how does it happen?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
What does your end user like?
Yeah, I think Abstract is a Ethereum EVM layer 2. You know, we are pre-TGE, and right now we have a pretty robust ecosystem. Like, you know, right now we have around 6 app in our ecosystem generating, you know, $1.5 million to $2 million per month in revenue. So I guess I think the lesson here is that, you know, if I look at, you know, the topic today, gas or not gas, is my mental model will be what is already happening in Web 2, right? People are comfortable paying gas in Web 2, right? They pay transaction fee all the time. So I guess, you know, the heart of the matter is that as long as we have great utility, we have product market fit on chain, and we can embed gas onto it, people are willing to pay, right? And for us, we always innovate not so much on the Web3 tech. It's more to how do we innovate great products, how do we abstract away the user journey complexity so that people able to use crypto apps in the invincible way that, you know, they don't feel that it's crypto, right? So I think that's really our principle, how we really design the chain.
Jake.
Yeah, so I think for gas, it basically comes down to 2 things. Number 1 would be security. That's why gas exists in the first place. And number 2, user experience. So every chain has their own architecture, right? So it depends. Let's assume the security part is secured, and then it goes back down to user experience. So if you ask me, my 2 cents of gas would really depend on usage. If you are working on an application, you know, or something that you're gaining value from it, DeFi, trading, gambling, right, where you're looking to put in money 1 cent and get back $1, gas is no issue. But if you're building something user experience based, you know, like a consumer application, a gaming application, AI application, then definitely gas should take a back seat. It should be invisible, and, you know, so that the user experience is as seamless as what you're familiar with any of the apps in the Play Store or App Store.
Yeah, I would agree with that, the basic principle. I mean, you're right. If you're dealing with high-value transactions, no one's going to care too much about the gas because it's a small factor. But from a Hive point of view, we were doing social media, and people, every time they want to message someone, don't want to pay a fee for it because it kind of discourages conversations. But the other side of that is if you can develop a system where it doesn't cost a lot to have the transactions, and we basically had to do that with Hive, then it turns out there's not really much more challenge to ensuring financial transactions as opposed to messages themselves, right? It's just a matter of the protocol. So you kind of need gas in a proof of work system because it's so very expensive to run the system. But if you get to a blockchain that doesn't have a proof of work system, you really just don't need gas at that point.
So talking mass adoption, is gas something which drives mass adoption or drives value on the mass adoption?
Someone has to pay the gas, right? I think whether it's the developer or maybe it's the brand, subsidizing the cost temporarily for the consumer. I guess, I think the right question is that how would you encourage economic participation, right? So if our goal is to bring actual business model on chain, and that would, encourage people to pay for that service or pay for that utility, and I guess it's okay, right, to pay the gas embedded on it. And I think if we design an ecosystem that way, then you create this positive loop, right? That people will come and build actual real use cases on chain that is scalable, right? That will get mass adoption. Like what you said just now, Dan, is that if I need to pay to send a message every single time, it wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't get to a point that 2 billion people concurrently, send a message. And the fact that the market reward convenience and the market reward something that's better, right? And we're already living in a world that it's much better using a fintech app, using a social media app, and it's our goal here as an industry to really mimic those kind of experience as easy as possible. But if let's say, we do charge, like I really agree with what you say, Jake, is that it's about security and experiences. But if you optimize for security, I think that's really the first 10 years of the blockchain industry. We tried that. We had trouble getting the consumer crypto to enter the scene. I think for us is that we took another angle, is that, consumer crypto is the final frontier. And no one really cracked that yet at the moment. In terms of branding, we cracked that in a way, because Pudgy, for example, we generate 1 billion views every single day. So we have already cracked the code on the top of the funnel. Now we are coming to the middle of the funnel, that how can we create great user experience that rival, the Silicon Valley, right, or the China apps, the Southeast Asia super app, that we could bring in the next, 1 billion users. I mean, let's start with the next 10 million users first.
Yeah, I think really agree with Aaron there. I think if you're familiar with the innovation adoption curve, that curve with the chasm, we are right smack at that chasm right now, right? The ETFs, all the institutionals right now, we are at the part of crossing. I mean, if Trump doesn't screw us up and breaks the whole industry, he'll either get us across or he'll revert us back and we'll never get there. But I believe we'll get there. And I think then the whole gas conversation will start to evolve to user experience, right? Because, I mean, obviously, if I'm buying a Pudgy, I definitely would want to pay still, right? And I think as a NFT or kind of exclusivity, you want that kind of, in a way, filtering mechanism. But if I'm building the next social prediction markets or Facebook or whatever it is, right, it definitely shouldn't, I believe, and this is a personal opinion, that the users shouldn't ever have to pay gas, right? And I agree with what Aaron said, where the money comes from, I guess businesses will need to figure out their business model. But the user, if it's a consumer product, the user shouldn't have to pay at every transaction. Just doesn't make sense.
It's probably an interesting answer from Dan on that.
Well, I mean, first of all, I have to agree. I mean, you're not going to get people to pay fees for micropayments, right? For small payments, like when you just go buy a coffee or something, you don't want to pay a fee every time. And we don't have to, because the costs are not really that high for doing it. They might have been higher, back in the past, but we've got more efficient about this kind of thing. So in my opinion, all gas fees are going to go away. Any blockchain that's going to survive long term is going to get rid of them. So if they're here now, they're just a temporary measure. And I get the feeling you guys probably think the same to some extent. Even if you have fees now, you're thinking, we're either going to have to get rid of them at some point if we want to scale up, or we're going to have to offer something very special that makes it worth using our system despite those fees.
So beneath the structure you built the blockchain, or the blockchain you need underneath, if we think we do everything gas-free, what could be the negative impact? So talking security, talking spam. How does this affect the blockchain activity or the social media activity? And would this be something which said, okay, before we get too much spam, we need cost? So it's a pro and cons on it. So I'd like to get your ideas about that.
Well, I think both can exist at the same time, right? Like, I think one of the major narrative why Ethereum is pumping in price because there's a huge adoption of stablecoin infrastructure right now, right? I think stablecoin infrastructure at this juncture point is almost 100%, and I think the world have to trust on the decentralized network to settle, right? I think right now it seems to me Ethereum is that blockchain that everyone have consensus that it will settle, massive stablecoin volume in the next, 1 to 2 years, and when it comes to that, you need security, right? You need the peace of mind that if I'm transferring $1 billion on chain, I need security. So obviously that's very different than something like what Abstract is doing, which is really optimizing for consumer crypto, right? Security might not be the top of mind. They want convenience, they want fun, they want to, have the utility. So I think both can exist, right? Depending on your use case.
So, sorry, what was the question again?
The question again is around, if everything is gas-free, how do you act on security and spam? So this could be affecting too many comments on something, too many blah, blah, blah on that, and so on. And is this positive, negative, or are there other mechanisms around it?
Okay, yeah. So I think every chain will have their own mechanism. I can't speak for all the other chains, but I know at scale, we are basically a zero gas fee chain. And how it's solved is basically, instead of needing the SKL token, which has obviously value to kind of do transactions, we have a non-monetary kind of token. Think of it like when you go to the arcade and you want to play a game and you bring Malaysian ringgit, you can't play it. You can't play the arcade. You have to go to the counter and swap the ringgit for tokens. And that tokens give you credits to play the games, whether it's pinball or whatever, right? So at scale, we have another second token called Hiew, which only our developers have access to. The faucet is at the back end, right? So that means the developers, when they're building an app, let's say I'm building a new Instagram, right? Every user gets, let's say, 100 Hiews, and everything just automates at the back end instantaneously. And that prevents spam. And no user can go and buy that off an exchange or a DEX or wherever. It doesn't exist, So that's how we prevent attacks and stuff.
So yeah, along kind of very similar lines. From the security point of view, I think it's fairly obvious. You look at a bunch of blockchains out there, they don't really need fees to do security. Fees really came because of proof of work as a security mechanism. If that's your security mechanism, it's a very expensive one and you need fees to cover it. But if you come up with an alternative method that doesn't require proof of work, the fees kind of fall out of that issue, the security issue. But what you're left with, I guess, next you're proposing is the spam idea. But this is also a problem that's been solved outside of crypto too. It's called rate limiting, and we do it all the time. Every website out there, you can't bombard it with requests. It'll just stop responding. So it limits how many requests you can make, and we use a similar mechanism on Hive. It's rate limited. Now we do rate limit it based on how much of the coin you have, so that you can sort of, if you have more of the coin, you have the ability to send more messages out. But nonetheless, it's rate limiting for everyone, and that's the way you prevent spam. Not trying to make everybody pay for it, because if you make everybody pay for it, you're already getting the question that micropayments just look like spam, but they're really quite useful.
Okay, we talked about costs. Blockchain costs something, machines behind it, and so on. So economics as an overlaying topic, but who should pay? And we had different opinions already, and I really like it because it's a panel discussion and not something where we all have to agree on. So who should pay? The user, the developer, or the inflation? Who would like to start?
Who should pay? I think at the end of the day, if you want something sustainable, I think the user should pay. But it has to be invincible, right? I mean, I'm not. Maybe Jay, you can chip in more. Is that how do you as a layer one chain generate revenue, right? To pay for all your infra to make your chain secure. I think the costs have to be paid. Someone have to pay the cost, right? And so I think to me is that as long the fees are invincible, they could be low cost gas. There may be gas that is not that when there's concurrent user, it doesn't spike up. I think as long as it's invincible to the user, I think that's fine, right? And because you only reach 1 million concurrent user when your app is really meeting a demand in the market, right? And if that is meeting demand, you're always able to commercialize it. You're able to always attract new capital from retail, and then it will pay by itself.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, it goes back to your business model, right? So take an example, right? If you remember Grab, I don't know, 5-8 years ago when they started, and they're giving away coupons, 10 ringgit off, 20 ringgit off, 50% off. How do they sustain? Who pays, right? So I think the conversation about gas is not linear. It's not one-to-one to one. It's a business model, and that extrapolates all the way to the future based on where the chains or the ecosystem wants to go, right? I think eventually chains will unlock new revenue models, revenue streams beyond just gas, right? And I think as the industry matures, that's where we're headed to. Now, for scale, how we work is really, really different than most of the other chains out there, right? And it's going to sound a bit weird because most chains, users pay the gas. At scale, the builders are the ones paying the monthly subscription model to scale. But the big difference is compared to AWS, where it's tiered pricing, it's basically a flat fee of a couple of hundreds a month. And the other big difference is that whether you do 1 transaction a day or 100,000 transactions a day, it's the same flat fee, right? So that enables you to build experiences that may or may not exist in today, right now. And we run a different validation model than POS, POW, and stuff, which I don't want to get in because it's too technical. But basically, validators are profitable from day one. So that's how it works for us.
So on Hive, it's maybe somewhat similar, but somewhat different too. We have the resource credits, which basically refill. So you don't run out of resource credits, but you're rate limited by your resource credits. And as far as who pays those resource credits, the chain is neutral on that point. You as a user can pay for your resource credits, or a game or an application can basically delegate resource credits to its players or to its customers so that they don't have to pay. So it's kind of, you don't have to rely on an application provider to buy credits for you. But if they want to do that, they can, and if they think that makes their customers' experience better, that's what they do.
Time is running. I like to do a question before we do the last round with statements. So looking into the future, is an end game, depending on where you are, or maybe what you wish, not looking from your own product, maybe looking into mass adoption and so on. Is an end game no fees at all, hidden fees somewhere, or micro fees in the project or in the product or whatever? So any of your opinions, it don't need to be the product-based opinion. Maybe you answer this as a person who is active in Web3 anywhere.
Yeah, I think the retail have to pay the fees, right? In a way that they don't feel that they are paying the fees. That's my stance, because at the end of the day, you cannot always subsidize the cost, right? For example, even you pay, let's say, even on your side, the builders pay a subscription fee, but if they don't get, product market fit, right? If they don't generate revenue on their end, they will one day stop paying subscription fee as well, So I think really the heart of the argument is that as a chain, as an ecosystem, how could we help our ecosystem app to be sustainable, right? To generate revenue on its own. I think that's the ultimate question, and this is what we focus on, is that, you know, in a way we sort of like coined this term, the revenue meta. Like people will build an abstract, they are generating revenue. We don't give grants as a chain. You know, we barely give a lot of marketing support as well until you prove yourself first. So again, that is the values that we are cultivating. How can we bring the actual real builders who are incredible entrepreneur on chain, build something that is borderless, right? And able to generate revenue to pay for all its costs. And I think that cost will perpetually subsidize all these fees that you are seeing.
Yeah, agree there. I think it goes back down to as we mature as an industry in the blockchain side of things, there's going to be way more demand, way more transactions than we ever imagined possible, right? Subsequently, the more transaction it is, eventually with the unit economics, the cost to run a transaction will eventually drop to really cheap. That's number one. The second thing I believe, and this is a personal opinion, is that eventually the future of blockchain will be multi-chain. Multi-chain meaning if you're a Web3 company, if you're a Web2 company, and you want to spin up your own L1, L2, or L3 chains for whatever reason, it's going to be possible and it's going to be way cheaper than what it is today. And that eventually will drive down. You won't get the spike of gas fees like what you do today. You know? So obviously at scale, we enable anyone to spin up their own L1 easily without having to set up nodes, validators, you know, and I think Abstract is a great example of, you know, what the future will be, because they spun up their own chain as well with ZK Sync, right? So I think the future will be multi-chain. Cost per transaction is going to get cheaper, and eventually it wouldn't be an issue.
Honestly, Jake said it all. I think he's 100% correct there. At scale, prices go down. They go down so far, nobody notices it anymore. It becomes a non-issue. And your point about multiple chains is also quite correct, I think.
So we are nearly running out of time. So I like to thank you for being here on stage as a last panel here from that lovely ChainCulture #1. Yeah, we will go into a nice evening with or without fees, probably with beer and drinks and talks.
Feeless.
Feeless beers, yes. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort to be here and supporting this last panel. So, picture time.
ChainCulture.